one night, I don't even remember who brought it up, but we went over to Jeff Strauss's house, went and had some beers, had to get some beers, and Rob had his guitar and Jeff had a drum set already set up. I brought my horn with me and we listened to a Blues Brothers album.
There was Joe Blatnick, myself, Rob, Al, who played trumpet, and I think it was Joe.
And we just get together and do that kind of stuff and just play, or we go over to Rob. We were in Rob's bedroom once in a while, this small bedroom, and crammed ourselves in there.
As this weekly Friday night gathering continued, and the music actually started to sound like recognizable songs, the circle of friends realized that additional members were needed to complete the ensemble.
We thought, well, we could do this material, and but we needed a horn section, and we needed, you know, a bigger band to do it with.
And I was initially opposed to it because I didn't want it to get it out of hand. But I was voted down again, which is great. But then somebody knew somebody who knew somebody who played these other instruments, and I guess that's when we got Dan and Kurt and Lane to join, and it really filled out the band.
And we decided that we needed a sound system and a keyboard player, maybe another guitar player. And I remembered at that point that Kurt and Lane had just broken up from another band that they were in, and plus they had a sound system. So,
and I think he might have also been inquiring about a sound system. Maybe Dan knew we had this sound system from Destiny or whatever, so Kurt tells me about it. It's like, hey, there's these bunch of guys that are gonna, you know, in that days we used to do nothing but jam. We'd go from basement to basement with this Shure Vocal Master and just jam out songs.
That was pretty hysterical, watching everybody pound down beers and try to play music at the same time. And so it really started, I think, as the band when we started to do this Blues Brothers routine, and we played, got it together to play at a Wycliffe recital.
After practicing for weeks, the band decided to take its repertoire of 5 songs, if 5 songs can be considered a repertoire, and perform at a Wycliffe High School recital in March 1979, and subsequently performed at 2 other high school recitals. Over the next year, the band, still called the band at this point, concentrated on practicing and eventually ventured their new songs on unsuspecting patrons of backyard barbecues and graduation parties. The band landed its first public gig at the Flipside, a small bar in Cleveland Heights, on October 9, 1980. At the time, Kurt and Dan were merely juniors in high school. In order to advertise the date, the group needed a name. In a pitiful attempt to coerce patrons to the bar, some members thought the name Free Beer should work quite nicely when advertisements in local weekly publications would read, "Free beer at the Flipside."
I remember Lane liking that one. Not that Lane drank all that much beer, but he did like that free beer.
it's kind of interesting how I came up with the name of the band. Back in 1979, while pondering the theories of Plato, Copernicus, and Sir Isaac Newton, and their relation to the Pythagorean theorem.
It hit me one night, and I thought of the name. It was me. It's the one thing I did in the band that I will take credit for.
My dad's first question was, how many pieces are in the band? He's thinking of polka bands, how many 5-piece bands, 6-piece bands? I said, there's 8 of us. And my mom in her German accent, oh, like a pieces of 8?
The name Pieces of 8, I came up with it by, I didn't come up with the name actually. I don't think I did I? No.
There was a big band in the late 70s called Styx, and they had released an album called Pieces of 8. And then I thought, wow, that would be a great name for a band as opposed to just an album cover, you know, album. And
I came up with the name of the band.
Further investigation revealed that the quantum theory and atomic structure directly relate to the properties of electromagnetism and the aggregate demand curves downslope in times of recession.
Treasure Island's on, you know, and I'm sitting there and I hear this parrot on Long John Silver's shoulder saying, Pieces of 8, Pieces of 8. And I said, yeah, that's it, that's it. That's got to be the name of the band.
Elton John and Kiki D's dual octave ballad, Don't Go Breaking My Heart, which debuted back in I'm sorry, what was your question?
T-shirts were made, jackets were printed, and plans to conquer the music world were initiated as Pieces of Eight began performing at the Flipside on a regular basis to establish itself as a bar band. Not performing for financial gain, but purely for self-amusement and an opportunity to spend a night out with the guys. This philosophy became evident early on. Practices typically lasted 6 hours, yielding only one new song learned, but a far greater amount of hangovers and memories were produced.
Band practices have been very interesting throughout the years. I think probably the most memorable ones were the ones that didn't take place at the shop, but took place at people's houses, because we always had good intentions of getting a lot done, but we usually ended up just drinking beer and watching TV.
I remember when we first started practicing all the time, it was like we played at a club. We'd set up the whole system, except for lights, once in a while lights, and just play. And people would show up, and it'd be like playing at a club, but not playing at a club.
And then we had the Shrillies come in. There's a couple of girlfriends of the guys in the band, girls they were dating back then, but there's 3 girls, I can't remember all their names, but we were doing Hey Jude, and I just remember them, the background, doing the na-na-na-nas with us at the end, and I think we played it for about a half hour.
In an attempt to perform beyond the sticky, smelly confines of the Flipside stage, Pieces of Eight competed in a citywide Battle of the Bands contest at a West Side nightclub called the Cleveland Connection, and won first place out of more than 20 other bands. The band used this opportunity to associate with the underworld of booking agents, management types, and local talent scouts. This association resulted in a long run of engagements at various venues around the Cleveland area, including nightclubs, bars, colleges, and high school dances.
We played at a St. Ignatius or St. Ed's dance one time, and we played Moni Moni for about 5 minutes, and all the little kids were on the dance floor screaming.
Some expletives, and next thing we know, the nuns or the principals are shutting down the dance and telling everybody if they hear it again, they're gonna have to go home.
In 1983 and '84, the band was invited by the Rascal House, a popular college bar at which the band played frequently, to provide poolside entertainment in Daytona Beach, Florida during spring break. A land speed record from Cleveland to Daytona Beach of 36 hours was set due to numerous vehicular breakdowns.
First the brakes went, Lane was driving. I remember him yelling over the radio, "I don't have any brakes." We lost the transmission the second time. We lost the differential the third time, then we said, "The hell with it, we got a new truck."
And we had to unload our broken down truck in the middle of the freeway and push the equipment around onto the other truck amidst the traffic so that we could get the equipment down to Daytona Beach. And just before we left, Al stood by the truck that had died and played taps on his trumpet at the side of the freeway.
To this day, a majority of the band members do not recall ever eating any meals in Florida, but have vivid memories of rising in the morning with heads pounding like the previous night's drums, and gingerly crossing the street to the convenience store to purchase a 12-pack of beer and fruity ice treats, both of which were consumed poolside prior to the day's performance.
So they'd always have these companies, these alcohol companies, promoting their product. And one afternoon, this company came in called Malibu and brought in all this stuff, and they wanted to use our equipment, and we're kind of like, what's in it for us? And so, well, we'll give you a case of Malibu. That was all we needed that week, just more alcohol.
Joe Blatnick was turned into a fresh fruit basket, and Kurt Kendig was forcibly and repeatedly injected in the mouth by a syringe full of rum while he protested,
"It burns, it burns!" We put more in his mouth anyway.
Well, I had a plane flight to catch the next morning, and I didn't make it. Some of the other people can tell you a little more about that because I don't remember it.
Well, he got the syringe full of rum the night before, and good old Twinkle Toes, somebody turned his alarm clock watch off.
In June of 1984, Mike Sosik left the band to pursue a lucrative career in the research of Three Stooges history. Joe Blatnick took over on drums, and Randy Kumis, another Wycliffe High graduate known for his vocal prowess, became lead singer.
When I first got the phone call to be in Pieces of Eight, I was thrilled to death. Here was this working band, of hometown boys, made good, and it was awesome.
2 performances at the Richfield Coliseum and a back fence party at Cleveland Municipal Stadium would be just a few of the accomplishments the band members would look back on as highlights of their career. Although not all gigs were as prestigious as performing in these well-known Cleveland institutions.
I think the worst job that I can remember was back in, I don't know, 82 or 83. We played at a bar called the Zephyr Lounge somewhere on the west side. And it was so small that the stage wasn't big enough. We ended up having the brass, which at that time consisted just of Al and myself. There was not enough room on the stage for us, so we had to set up bar tables, and we stood on the bar tables and played the entire evening. And to top it off, at the end of the evenings, the place flooded because the toilets overflowed.
I hated playing at Rock Heaven. There was about 20 flights of stairs to go up with all that equipment. I think I fell down the stairs there once too.
This guy would have us set up in a different part of the room each time we came in there. One time we played up in the bar, and one time we played down in the corner, one time we were outside, and this guy was just such an idiot.
Remember the one time we took the, we had to take apart the railing, take apart the brass railing so that brass players could stand there.
Spanky's East. It was the day of my graduation. I celebrated a little too much, and I couldn't even play the keyboards. Not like I could in the first place, but...
The Blues Brothers at Ramones did not fly. You know, we should have had the chicken wire in front of us for that. They would have been pelting us with bottles and cans, no doubt.
Probably the worst job we played at was Edgewater Yacht Club for New Year's. We had played there once before in the summer and had a great time. Went there expecting to have another good time, except that the crowd that was there for New Year's was much different than the crowd that was there in the summer. It turned out to be a pretty old crowd that wanted to hear Glenn Miller and rumbas and stuff, which anybody that knows us knows we don't do that too well.
1984 also saw the beginning of several long-running traditions. Playing a few songs at band members' weddings, annual performances at Willowick Home Days, Huron-JC's Boppin' in the Basin, and performing at the Boathouse at Put-in-Bay.
Put-in-Bay is great because it doesn't matter how bad or how drunk you get on stage, people love it. They'll dance to anything.
Put-in-Bay jobs, they were kind of like a drunken blur. We just try to have a lot of fun.
The flashing incident. Yeah, the Keystone Cops of Put-in-Bay decided to arrest us for flashing while we were driving down the street in Laser's I think it was Laser's pickup truck.
And we were goofing around in the back, and I had my camera flash that I was just kind of flashing just to, you know, after it's so dark and you flash a bright light, it just kind of lights up their face. You see the whites of their eyes.
They had a blockade set up, like 4 police cars with the lights going and everything. And we're like, what the hell is this?
And we got pulled over and thrown in the jail. And they didn't think it was a joke.
I had to wait till the next Put-in-Bay trip to get my flash back. I went for 3 months without a camera flash.
The summer of 1985 saw the beginning of a continuous metamorphosis in personnel that would last for the next 5 years. Lane Kendig left the band to be replaced by Joe Lazar, yet another Wycliffe High School grad.
Joe Blatnick asked me if I wanted to play, and I told him I don't play keyboards. He said, "That's all right. You could, the guy we have that's now, good. That's good enough." He said, "That's good enough."
Randy Kumas left the band, returning Joe Blatnick to vocal duties as Mike Sosik returned to his seat behind the cymbals. Laura Porter joined the band to share her melodious voice and precision saxophone abilities. Al Widmer left his longtime musical comrades and was replaced by trumpet player Dave Crew. Bob Matson changed from bass guitarist to soundman as Joe Lazar abandoned the keyboards to pick up the bass and Lane returned to the keyboards. Bill Sokolsky, affectionately known as Mr. Bill, became the lighting guru and assisted Bob with the sound responsibilities, while Mike Casadante remained perched behind the speakers in monitor mixing anonymity. By the end of 1987, Dave Crew vacated his trumpet position and referred his longtime friend George Holobinko to the band. Meanwhile, Lane Kendig, still upset that his antique stool had been purposely and vindictively run over by the band truck years prior, left the band again to pursue a career in antique stool restoration. Mike Butzbach, another Wycliffe High graduate, joined the band, bringing with him technologically advanced keyboard equipment and a fear of flying insects that would forever amuse his bandmates.
Well, I knew a lot of the people in the band from high school. Joe was a couple years ahead of me. Lane was a couple years ahead of me. Dan and Kurt were in the same class that I was. So I knew the band by reputation. I hadn't seen them a lot before. So it was...
By 1988, Laura Porter's musical career expanded beyond the talents of Pieces of Eight to the point that she would ultimately produce recordings of her own music. To fill this brass void, Jim Wilson began to share not only his saxophone, but various other reed instrument and vocal talents with the band on a full-time basis.
Sort of joined the band by default. Never did get that tape that I was supposed to get in order to learn all the charts. So it was a matter of kind of standing up on stage and going, okay, I remember the tune. I wonder what the sax part is.
In 1989, George Holubinko puckered his lips for the last time as trumpet player, and Al Widmer, bored to tears at reorganizing his underwear drawer, rejoined the band. In December of 1990, Joe Lazar relieved himself of bass guitar duties and was replaced with Wycliffite by marriage, Dave DeWalt.
My wife's brother said he needed a bass player for the band, so I came and tried out. At least I thought I was trying out, but I guess I heard it didn't matter later. So basically, I married into the band.
At the same time, Mike Sosik left the band and Joe Blatnick again became the drummer. During all these changes, the name of the band was expanded to Pieces of Eight featuring the Lakeside Brass, as a cheap marketing ploy in an effort to describe the type of music the band performed, as well as pacifying the brass section by making them feel somewhat significant.
My favorite band nickname would be Geriatrics and the Golden Agers.
And then another one, I think, which originated at Put-in-Bay was 8 Penises in the Lakeside Sack.
Pieces of Eight and Lakeside Brass Holes.
Let's see, what was it? Piece of shit in the dead fish, is that what it was?
I think that was upstairs at the Pirates Cove, or whatever it's called now. We put our logo up there real nice, and someone came in after us and kind of changed it around a little bit. I liked it better the other way.
Behind the scenes of any performance, all the band members participate in loading equipment and setting up sound and lighting systems. This activity is not without its perils. Throughout the years, band-related injuries while occurring on the job were mysteriously not covered under the Workmen's Compensation Clause of the band's benefit package.
Well, I suffered one of those band injuries, and I was bleeding a little bit. In my case, it seemed like a lot. Other people said it was a little bit, but I got a little nauseous.
He cut his hand on the corner or something, I think, and he's okay when he sees somebody else's blood. But when he saw his own, he just had to sit down, turn white as a ghost, and give me the bucket, just in case he had to let go.
Backstage, I found an old piece of corn cob, maybe about 4 or 5 inches long, all dried out, and I don't know why I picked it up.
I remember getting hit in the head from, must have been 100 feet away. I think Sosik must have logged this thing at me and hit me in the side of the head.
As Lane was walking across the stage, I threw it full go, submarine pitch, just like Dan Quisenberry. You can just hear it flying through the air. It hit Lane square in the neck. And Lane did the classic, ooh, ooh.
Willowick a few years ago when we went down the little slide after and we all got beat up. I remember getting beat up pretty bad.
The slide was wet because it rained that night. And they decided, well, let's go down and nobody's around. And they get up the top and start going down, not realizing that the water had just made this slide ridiculously fast. So they start going down, they hit the first hill and go airborne to the second hill and come down, and every one of them was holding their ass because it hurt so bad.
From 1991 on, Pieces of Eight continued to perform at Put-in-Bay on an annual basis. A variety of local bars and nightclubs, an occasional gig in the Flats in Cleveland, as well as regular Christmas and New Year's Eve parties. Since the beginning of the band, having a good time was always considered more important than musical abilities of the members of Pieces of Eight.
I remember the game of volley being invented behind some party center sometime where we just had these the kids' balls that you get from a grocery store and just making up games with those, sort of a variation on volleyball and tennis.
It was the first or second time we were out of Puddin Bay, and we went out to play golf. This was before Bob started playing with us. And we came back to the cabin, and hanging from the rafters was these streams of volley. We just sliced the thing up, and Dan and Al just took one look at each other. They were going to cry. They looked like they were going to cry.
Some jokesters, after I got totally obliterated, took me home and then wrapped me up in a cast. They casted my whole arm to my body, and then when I woke up the next morning, I couldn't move.
Playing in Pieces of 8 wasn't any kind of job. It was just more or less something to do to have fun. And that was the main goal. And we always did that. We always had a good time.
Just like anywhere, you know, out on a gig, living across the street, at practice. It's one big party, and that's the best thing. You know, everybody gets together and has a good time.
And you know, our main goal was to always make sure that the people were having as much fun as we were, you know, which sometimes if they're real deadheads, it's hard to do, but if they're drinking as much beer as the band is, then they should be having as much fun.
Well, it's like a bunch of new brothers that I got that I never had. The band has always been not just a band, and I think that's part of the success of it, is that we're just friends. We're just not, there's not one person that's a rock star, it's everybody feels when somebody else is hurting or somebody else's joy. We all share in that. I think that's the best part about being in the band. Wouldn't trade it for anything.
In 1994, as the bond among these friends continued to strengthen and the relationships matured, guitar player Rob Vincent's health began to fail. Since his birth, Rob fought a lifelong battle with hemophilia. Although his condition was known only to his family and close friends, Rob had always tried to live a normal, unrestricted life, participating in sports, even parachuting out of planes.
He just went and did whatever he wanted to do, or found a way to do it. And like when he wanted to go jump out of an airplane, he did. And so he didn't let people treat him special.
But years earlier, Rob was diagnosed with acquired immune deficiency syndrome from infected medication he received in the treatment of his hemophilia. The disease had now manifested itself in the form of an acute bout with pneumonia. Because of the close friendships that developed over time, the band members struggled with the thought of performing without Rob on lead guitar. While Rob was in the hospital, the band took several months off from performing. Rob returned to the stage to perform for a brief time, but eventually his condition worsened. Although his technical abilities on the guitar and his will and determination never faltered, Rob found himself no longer physically able to perform. His last performance with the band was on June 24th, 1995.
Rob was one of those rare rock guitar players that had the kind of taste and style that you usually only see in classical and jazz musicians.
Extra licks he would throw in was just enough to fill the song and not to make Rob stand out.
He was very subtle about the way he played things. It looked like there was no effort involved.
To me, he was the musical driving force of Pieces of 8, you know. His guitar playing, the sound that he had on guitar, that single coil pickup is just awesome.
I think we must have been about 10 or 11. I remember Rob learned the beginning to Layla, and I thought he was a god. Rob was a guitar god. He was 10 years old and he could play Eric Clapton. That was incredible. I still think about that too.
After much thought and discussion, the members decided to continue performing and sought out Ken Calley as the new lead guitar player.
I knew Bill Sikelski because he had done sound for another band I was in. And when Rob became ill and unable to play out, they were looking for a part-time replacement guitarist. And I was just as lousy as the rest of the band, so I fit right in.
This is as the band exists today, still performing for the sole purpose of self-amusement with a pleasant side effect of offering its audiences an evening of entertainment. The band's accomplishments are also attributable to those friends, fans, and families of Pieces of 8 who have endured many of the same songs, jokes, antics, and whimsical mischief since 1979, and who continue to be the foundation of the band's success. Rob Vincent passed away on July 29, 1996, at the age of 37. He will always be remembered as an inspiration to the members and fans of Pieces of Eight. His commitment to excellence was evidenced by his personal style of playing guitar and the questioning, grinning glance he would cast across the stage to those who had made an occasional musical blunder.
He would just look up from his guitar and just give you some nasty stare like, don't do that again.
You know, you made a mistake and you got one of those, and it's the sort of thing where you just kind of wanted to go, sorry.
His laid-back demeanor consistently held tempers in check, and his quick-witted responses to the simplest of questions could, and often would, amuse most to the point of tears.
He wasn't only a strong influence as a musician, he was a strong influence as a person, to me personally, and I think to everybody.
Rob was always the kind of person that would kind of calm everything down. He was not somebody that would get upset real easily, and he kind of babysat a lot of us.
When you were one-on-one with him was when you could have some real, memorable moments. And I remember during the summer sometimes he and I would go up to Colby Park, and I remember he and I trying to figure out how to throw boomerangs once. He was an accomplished Frisbee thrower, and when I brought this boomerang over, it's like, let's go to the park and try this out. And I think we nearly killed each other with it.
You know, in a lot of parties we would bring out our guitars and Lane would play piano, just do all kinds of crazy songs and have some sing-alongs and stuff like that. Lots of good times.
In my mind, Rob was the type of guy you could never get mad at. No matter what he did or what he said, he did a lot of things to me. He made fun of me and just poked jokes and stuff. Tore my one pink shirt.
If you were gonna be somebody who could sit back and look at yourself, Rob was the person to be.
He was a good guy, and I miss him. I miss him.
Rob will be remembered for his honesty and positive outlook despite the hardships and discomfort he faced on a daily basis. His ability to overcome adversity and continuous efforts to strive for excellence will always be a reminder that anything can be accomplished with perseverance and the support of family and friends. He remains in the minds and hearts of those who had the pleasure of his company and the opportunity to share so many happy memories, as best friends and brothers.
That's all I got.
All right.
That's good, that's fine. I hate being on camera.
Yeah, he's sitting on the bed half naked. Hey, come on over here, sit down, let's bullshit for a while. No thanks, Mike, I don't want to sit next to you.
And they went in the dressing room to go talk about it, and all we heard were bodies hitting the walls in there and people running in to stop it. It was funny.
And it's kind of funny, actually. I being the vocalist, I was really not allowed to play guitar, which always, kind of made me laugh inside because, actually my guitar playing wasn't that good to begin with, but apparently the band knew it and I didn't,
I like to say that Al Vidmar is a big dick. My reasoning behind that, well, if you know Al, self-explanatory. If you don't know Al, consider yourself lucky.
I was drunk most of the time. What do I know?
mean, I don't remember any major fist fights recently, so I think it could go on for at least another 5, 6 years.